Beyond gold, the real assets billionaires are storing for collapse. What if the single most popular defense against financial collapse is, in fact, the greatest deception? For generations, the rallying cry for financial survival has been simple: buy gold. It is the countermeasure taught in every book, the asset every major Western power held dear since the days of the British Empire, and the one physical store of value that cannot be printed by a desperate government. But while millions of everyday citizens across the English-speaking world and Europe rushed to secure physical bullion and gold ETFs, the world's true billionaire class, the family offices, the sovereign funds, the titans of industry, are executing a radically different, far quieter trade. They are not merely stacking metal, they are securing the foundation of a post-collapse world. The quiet extraction is already underway, a strategic move that acknowledges a terrifying historical pattern. When systems reset, the real prize is not wealth measured in currency or even in precious metals, but control over the basic necessities that ensure survival, stability, and the ability to rebuild civilization on their own terms. If you are still focused solely on the gold price, you are looking at the playbook of the last century, while the elite are executing the strategy for the next. The difference between survival and ruin will be understanding this shift right now. The journey to this invisible emergency began decades ago, but its symptoms are immediate and undeniable to any modern citizen living in the US, UK, Canada, or Australia. You see it in the crushing national debt, now operating at levels that dwarf the post-war recovery budgets and the military financing that defined the 20th century. Every major Western nation operates on a system of leverage so profound that a systemic collapse is not a possibility, but an inevitability of mathematics. This is the financial experiment we are all living inside of, where central banks print trillions with keystrokes and governments borrow as if tomorrow will never come. This fragility is the very reason the ultra-wealthy are moving decisively. They have seen the historical rehearsals. They watched the hyperinflation in Weimar Germany following the crushing war debts of the First World War, where fortunes measured in marks became worthless paper, only to be supplanted by tangible assets. They have studied the quiet, centuries-long debasement of the Roman denarius, which eventually destroyed the most powerful empire in history from within. The lesson is immutable. Governments will always choose to debase the currency, to implement a silent, cruel tax on their citizens, rather than admit financial defeat. The conventional wisdom dictates that gold and silver are the immune defense against this debasement, and for a fleeting moment they are. They hedge inflation. But the true game, the game of enduring power through a societal reset, is played on a different board, a board defined not by exchange value, but by intrinsic, irreplaceable utility. The first and most critical asset class being quietly accumulated by those preparing for a true systemic discontinuity is productive land and arable farmland. This is the oldest form of wealth, the original asset that supported every civilization, and yet it is often overlooked in the digital, high-frequency trading age. For the English-speaking public, the idea of owning vast tracts of land often seems an abstract luxury, reserved for the landed gentry of British history or the ranch owners of the American West. But for the elite, it is the fundamental hedge against not just currency risk, but social disorder and resource scarcity. Consider the scale of the acquisition. Entities tied to the world's most powerful billionaires, from major tech founders to investment gurus, have become major private owners of US and Australian farmland, controlling hundreds of thousands of acres. Why farmland? It is the purest form of non-dilutable wealth. It produces a commodity, food, that is literally required for human existence, and that demand is inelastic. When currencies fail, when global supply chains fracture, a parcel of land that can grow crops will always hold more value than a digit on a screen, or even a bar of gold that requires complex systems to trade for essentials. The land itself is a factory of survival. This play is not just about farming. It extends to the control of natural resources, specifically water rights and energy deposits. In the American West, where droughts and climate volatility are becoming the norm, financial entities are quietly securing the deeds and permits that control the flow of life. Water rights in key aquifers and rivers are being valued not in terms of utility, but in terms of future scarcity. A scarcity that only intensifies as global populations grow and climate patterns shift. For the prepared elite, owning land is not about a pastoral lifestyle. It is about controlling the choke points of survival. They are buying the ground beneath your feet and the water you need to survive, recognizing that these are the true anchors of wealth that a government cannot seize, print, or manipulate. This strategy directly leverages the systemic challenges facing Western society, where urban populations are entirely dependent on long, fragile supply chains. When the truck stops running, the food doesn't get delivered, and the water treatment plant fails, the person who controls the land and the source will be the one who dictates the terms of the new economy. This is the first, most tangible layer of the real collapse playbook, securing the physical capacity to sustain life independent of the crumbling financial superstructure. This strategy of moving into land and resources is a direct reflection of historical patterns observed during every major societal breakdown, from the decline of the Byzantine Empire, where those with tangible assets like real property survived the debasement of the gold solidus, to the post-war European landscape where land ownership was the only reliable measure of wealth against rampant inflation and political instability. The land is the final arbiter of value. It is the ultimate real estate of self-sufficiency and the foundation of power in a chaotic world. The lesson of land is simple: own what is essential. But the elite's preparation does not stop at raw resources. It extends to the very arteries that keep the modern world functional, even during a crisis. The quiet extraction phase moves from the earth to the essential grid, essential infrastructure and supply chain control. They are buying the pipes, the wires, the warehouses, and the logistic choke points. The modern economy, especially in densely populated Western nations like the United Kingdom and the United States, is an unbelievably complex machine dependent on flawless logistics. A simple 2-week disruption to the supply chain can lead to panic, empty shelves, and social chaos. The ultra-wealthy are not merely investing in infrastructure for a stable return. They are securing the mechanisms that allow civilization to function when the money system fails. We are talking about private ownership of crucial, often invisible assets, massive strategically located data centers that house the digital blueprints of the future, long-haul fiber optic cables that carry all global communication, private ports, and specialized logistics facilities that move every essential commodity, and vast, secure storage facilities for critical goods from grain silos to specialized cold storage. In a crisis, the person who controls the warehouse, the transportation network, or the data stream holds far more leverage than the person who holds a physical asset that cannot be moved or traded without that infrastructure. This is the financial lesson of every modern war, particularly the First and Second World Wars, where control of industrial capacity and transport was the decisive factor, far outweighing simple gold reserves. The lesson is repeated in every modern collapse. The means of production and distribution are the real power. The final hedge, the ultimate layer of protection that separates the merely rich from the eternally powerful, is not physical at all. It is intangible capital, specialized skills, and the sovereignty of self. This is the playbook that ensures the survival and proliferation of wealth across systemic resets. History proves that when societies collapse, those who possess irreplaceable skills, the ability to produce rather than just consume, are the ones who survive and thrive. This translates into two key strategies for the elite. First, securing human capital, the irreplaceable experts. This means private retainers for elite doctors, physicists, security analysts, and engineers, individuals whose knowledge cannot be inflated away or seized by the state. These highly skilled individuals are part of the collapse insurance policy. When public services are overwhelmed, the possession of a secured, private team capable of maintaining specialized technology or ensuring physical security is an asset worth more than any gold vault. Second, geographic and political sovereignty, the multi-jurisdictional escape. The world's elite, particularly those in the Anglo-American finance sphere, are not tied to a single national outcome. They are acquiring second and third citizenships, investing in strategically stable jurisdictions, often small, resource-rich nations with strong legal frameworks. They are not waiting for the system to fail. They are already outside of it. This ensures that if the fiscal tricks of the government, inflation, forced loans, or confiscation, reach a breaking point in their home country, their wealth and physical safety are already secured under a different flag. The true currency of the billionaire is not dollars or pounds, but optionality, the ability to choose which system to live under, which currency to use, and which rule of law to abide by. The collapse is coming. It is inevitable because the debt is mathematical. The question is no longer if the system will fail, but whether you will remain a passive accumulator of devaluing promises, or if you will begin the quiet, strategic move to own the foundational assets, the land that feeds the infrastructure that moves and the minds that rebuild, that will survive the reset and define the terms of the world that comes next.